Now, we're still feeling the effects of the financial crisis, which started with the banks, but international regulators have decided now's the time to ease restrictions on how they lend. Regulators still want banks to hold enough cash and assets they can sell quickly in case they run into trouble. But they've relaxed the rules on what types of assets banks can hold in case of such financial emergencies. Well, the new standard will be phased in from 2015, taking full effect by 2019. Well, William Black is a former federal regulator and currently Associate Professor of Economics and Law at the University of Missouri. He joins me live via Skype from New Orleans. William Black, what's your assessment of these new liquidity rules, and will they be welcomed by the banks, do you think?
Well, weakening them will certainly be welcomed by the banks. Basel III, which is what we're up to, attempt to undo the disaster that was Basel II, when the international rules not only didn't fix problems, actually created the problems. And in particular, this rule is designed to respond to problems like those that destroyed Lehman Brothers. It's actually a misnomer because Lehman Brothers wasn't destroyed by liquidity alone. It was destroyed by the fact that it had terrible assets. But it's perceived by many regulators as having been a liquidity problem. And so that prompted toughening the rule, which immediately got a fight both from banks and from many countries' regulators.
But some of these assets do raise serious questions, though. I mean, some of the assets that banks will be allowed to include are mortgage-backed securities. I mean, that seems odd, given that those proved to be unsellable and the cause of the crisis back in summer 2007.
Yeah, now there are mortgage-backed securities that are more what we call plain vanilla, pretty straightforward, but there are certainly mortgage-backed securities that are incredibly complex and can be very difficult to sell quickly. And the whole concept of liquidity is to have something you can sell quickly. This is even more problematic in terms of governmental bonds because, of course, you've seen the problem in the EU, especially in the periphery nations that have adopted the euro, where they can have incredible difficulty selling bonds quickly. And if indeed a large bank had to sell many sovereign bonds quickly, it could itself precipitate a crisis at the country level.
Let me get a final thought for you, talking about the country level, because this new agreement is an attempt to make banks less vulnerable to runs like that that happened to the UK's Northern Rock 2007. But that's not to say it'll prevent similar runs in the future.
That's correct, although in fairness, the United Kingdom did as early as 2009, adopt liquidity standards. So their banks will actually end up with more liquidity than will be required under Basel III. And you just explained to your viewers how long it will take to phase in Basel III. And by the way, that was largely a push by the Germans, whose banks are not in particularly good shape and wanted a great deal of time to phase in any Basel III requirement, and also wanted to weaken the rules in lots of subtle ways, like you've just been discussing, about what counts as liquidity.
All right, William Black, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Now, in Bangladesh's capital